Guinea pigs super spies? More likely than you think. Not every team gains JLA or Avengers level fame. Here are some obscure superhero teams you've never seen before. Starting off under the water with the Sea Devils. This team was just regular people doing extraordinary things. They appeared in Showcase issue 27 in 1960, but got their own series the next year. The group was made of 4 people: Dane Dorrance, Judy Walton, Judy's younger brother Nicky Walton, and their friend Biff Bailey. The group primarily operated underwater since their job was deep sea diving and treasure hunting. They spent a lot of time living every kid's dream. They fought sea monsters and discovered underwater kingdoms. If I was guaranteed to never drown, I would join this team so quick. The group also fought for the sea on land as environmentalists. They are suggested to maybe be a bit extreme at times with their methods in the New 52 reboot, but they remain allies to Aquaman. The Displaced Paranormals, or DP7, got their powers from the infamous White Event. You could probably guess this from the team name, but there are 7 of them. White Events create new, extremely powerful heroes. And on this particular team, we have a man that can now project an intangible version of himself, a strong man, a speedster, a woman whom whoever she touches would just lose all friction and slide around, a boy who produced acid from his skin, a mom that can energize and heal anyone she touched, and a teacher that could paralyze you with the poison his body produces. The team grew and shrank over time and has had about 40 appearances total. Born out of an atomic fallout, the heroes of Lawler, they are a team of 5 heroes. Their parents lived a bit too close to the site of an atomic fallout and their genes were altered, resulting in their children all being born with superpowers. The kids were sent away from their home planet and decided to come to Earth. Dr. Marden King lied to the young heroes, making them think that the Legion of Superheroes were criminals. The reason? So Doc could avenge his brother's death. When a random group of space people started to attack the Legion, they also thought the heroes of Lawler were bad guys. They fought, but soon realized they were both fighting with good intentions and became friends instead. The powers of each team member were as follows: Beast Boy, turning into any animal, not to be confused though with the more popular Beast Boy, they're different. Gas Girl, she can change her body into any gas. Evolvo Lad, he can make his body go to any point in human evolution, so he can become like an ape or the kind of man humanity can't even imagine yet. Life Last can create living creatures from inanimate objects. And finally, Duplicate Boy, he can duplicate any hero's superpowers. Eventually the team makes it back to their home planet and even gained a new member, Splitter, or Arm Fall Off Boy. Up next, Operation Lightning Storm, a team that shockingly does not include Thor. It did include one of my favorite superheroes, Sleepwalker, and that is how I know about this obscure team that only has about 16 appearances. The team was led by Miss Marvel. After the events of Civil War, Tony Stark had requested that Carol lead the Mighty Avengers, to which she agreed to do, but only if she got a second team too. This team's purpose was to take out villains before they became an Avengers level threat. The team was a covert strike team that could access any SHIELD resource they wanted, even though they weren't technically part of the SHIELD official lineup. Members of the team included Carol Danvers as the leader, Machine Man, Sleepwalker, Agent Sum, Agent Locke, Agent Baines, and Doc Farrell. Notable missions include saving a bunch of kidnapped people in Miss Marvel Volume 2 issue 20, and then erasing a colony of Brood in issue 24. The reason this team has very limited appearances is because they captured an imposter Miss Marvel, that upon discovery of being an imposter, she hit self-destruct and took the team's base down with her. Doc Farrell and Agent Baines didn't make it. G-Force is up next, and I do not mean the unit of acceleration. I am instead referring to the 2009 feature film with its central cast being super intelligent spy guinea pigs. Here's the thing, I thought that we were all locked into G-Force. I thought everyone was also living with the knowledge that this wackadoodle movie exists. Imagine my shock and surprise upon being told that this was obscure media. Please, if you knew about G-Force before now, drop that in the comments section. I should do a poll or something. The official plot synopsis for this film, like the one on IMDb, is a specially trained squad of guinea pigs is dispatched to stop a diabolical billionaire from taking over the world. The FBI had a secret division responsible for training and then dispatching the rodents. Shockingly, the FBI decided that spy rodents wasn't a necessity, so they went to shut it down, causing the small spies to begin their hero's journey. Another reason that I thought everyone was well aware of this movie was because it had a star-studded cast. Some of the people in this movie had no business being in a super guinea pig movie. Bill Nye, Will Arnett, Zach Galifianakis, Nicolas Cage, Sam Rockwell, Jon Favreau, Penelope Cruz, Steve Buscemi, and Tracy Morgan all lent their face or voice to the Disney flick. This was also the first live live-action Disney film released in Disney Digital 3D that wasn't a concert film, so G-Force literally made history. Ever since discovering another animal team, the Power Pachyderms, they have crossed my mind at least once a week because it was so wild. So they were a team of super elephants. Now here's the thing, it's ridiculous, but that was the point. It was a parody comic of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Later, it was a parody of the X-Men and just general Marvel heroes. The OG team name was the Adult Thermonuclear Samurai Elephants. Iconic. However, not everything went to plan. There were some significant delays, and so Marvel was forced to change the name and said they were now a parody of the X-Men. Either way, the team of four first appeared in Power Pachyderms issue 1 in 1989, and that's it. That's all we ever got. The issue itself was a gem. We learned the elephants were supercharged when their train car, bound for the zoo, was unhooked from the train by a monkey, and they happened to jump track to one that leads to a nuclear test zone. Then there's a big explosion that exposes the elephants to radiation, turning them into super elephants. They rejoin the circus briefly before heading off on their own, only to come back together to fight Clarinetto, former head of the Brotherhood of Musicians. The super elephants fight and defeat Clarinetto and his band of celebrity ninja impersonators. It was truly a piece of art. Wetworks, originally called Team 7, was a team published by Image Comics, which was later DC. Wetworks likely got its name from the actual term, meaning work involving the targeted elimination of an individual, so you can probably guess the team's vibe. If you guessed a covert operations team in the Wildstorm universe, then you get a gold star. Jackson Dane is team leader. Dane's team was sent out to raid a cave, but the cave was already raided when they got there. Nothing left except tubes filled with a mysterious gold liquid. Important to note, the team had a lot of remote-controlled weapons on them that happened to start a countdown to detonate when they were inside. So yeah, everything goes so wrong so fast. The tubes get broken, the liquid gets on the team and surrounds them, and then the explosives go off. But it turns out the liquid acted like protective armor because it was Sims. Adding a Sim to someone automatically makes them cooler, but you know what makes them even cooler than that? When they also fight vampires. Where did that come from? I don't know, we've lost the plot a little bit, but I'm not mad about it. Wetworks has been running across Eastern Europe single-handedly preventing a Twilight remake. They lost members along the way, even temporarily stopped their mission, but they regrouped and were called to Utah, of all places. Turns out someone was trying to make a Daemonite vampire hybrid. In the ensuing fight, the Sims all mutated and the Wetworks team started getting new powers and saved the day. Now you've heard of the Avengers, but turns out they weren't the first Avengers team Nick Fury created. Avengers 1959 were the OGs, and the team was all villains. Earth's mightiest heroes were, I guess, technically named after Earth's biggest headaches. Somehow I feel betrayed by this info, and I don't really have any personal stake in this game. The 1959 Avengers team was created by Nick Fury at the order of President Eisenhower. Team Constants include Nick Fury as leader, Sabretooth, Kraven the Hunter, Dominic Fortune, Namora, Bloodstone, and Silver Sable. This Avengers team is super interesting to me because, well, I love the vintage aesthetic, but also, Nick, what are you doing? Quite a few of the people on this team are certified menaces to society. I guess they were right for the missions they went on, which was like defeating Red Skull and his Yahtzee with an N Captain America, but Sabretooth? The team's efforts were pretty much focused on defeating various bad guys that belonged to the Yahtzees. Because the Avengers did so much good defeating all those bad guys, Nick pardoned all the past crimes of the team members. Controversial choice, but okay. The team operated in the 1950s but debuted in 2011. Dynamic duo Blue Falcon and Dynomutt of the Scooby-Doo extended universe are criminally underrated. They are literally just a guy and his dog out to save the world. Blue Falcon is a parody of Batman, specifically inspired by Adam West's. He doesn't have any superpowers, but he's so good at what he does, you would never need to know that. Blue Falcon and Dynomutt have appeared in their feature film, Scooby-Doo Mask of the Blue Falcon, among other Scooby-Doo media, including my favorite version in Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated. In that show, Blue Falcon was Radley Crown, a security guard at Quest Labs with a taste for adventure, love for birds, and his trusty security dog sidekick Reggie. One day a villain broke in and Reggie was fatally wounded. Mr. Crown fought for his dog, and that is how he became the literal crime-stopping machine, Dynomutt. Now, he can create anything from his mechanical body with absolutely no limits. Blue Falcon is this huge, incredibly strong, intelligent man, bit rough around the edges, but you don't really mind. He's got all the gadgets, including a Falcon car and a bird-themed utility belt. The duo has taken on at least 30 guys at once without even breaking a sweat. And finally, the challengers of the unknown are very interesting to me. They were a bunch of normal guys with above-average jobs on a plane that were flying to go be guests on a radio show called Heroes. We had a master of skin driving, a circus daredevil, an Olympic wrestling champion, and a trained jet pilot and war hero. Quite the mix of people. Of course, the plane went down, but the Fab Four survived. After the crash, they all have that like, wow, we almost passed on moment, and decided that they should challenge the unknown together, live life to the fullest. Challenging the unknown is really what these guys did. They were a for-hire service, so they got hired once to open Pandora's box. Pandora's box is something you famously should not open, however they were offered $1 million, so I get it. These guys start kind of taking on jobs that are too out there for others to handle or just too hard. They worked with the Pentagon of all places. They had created their home base in a mountain. The personification of evil actually came by and blew that up. At a certain point, the team just really did not catch a break. Eventually, there are new team members, a games designer, physicist, NASCAR driver, commercial pilot. What I love about this DC team are the people on the team are people. They had semi-regular jobs and just decided to start conquering challenges despite not receiving any superpowers.
Number 10, Alpha Flight. This might be a controversial way to start off this list, but I truly do believe that Alpha Flight can be more powerful than the Avengers team, especially if we're talking about consistent teamwork, which the Avengers members sometimes struggle with due to, well, butting heads with each other. I mean, people on the Avengers have straight up killed their other teammates before. That is just a fact. I mean, I did a whole list about the amount of times Iron Man has been basically killed by his teammates, and after talking it over with Andrew, it seems like Alpha Flight also has a better system in place for making sure their team not only works smoothly, but also that members are well trained before even earning their place on the team due to the existence of both Beta Flight and Gamma Flight, which were initially used as training teams. Although Gamma Flight has kind of become something else in recent years, but yes. And friends, before I move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not show us you love us by giving this video a little like? Click that thumbs up. Number 9, Midnight Suns. Midnight Suns is basically Marvel's main magical team. At least currently that's who we got. Midnight Suns typically deal with threats that are more mystical or supernatural in nature. They were brought together initially by Doctor Strange to fight against Lilith and her small army of demonic offspring known as the Lilin, which I mean, of course this team would be brought together by Doctor Strange, right? Each member of the original team roster had interacted with the Lilin before, which was what tied them all together. Team members and leaders have included Doctor Strange, Wong, Blade, Morbius, Magic, Nico Minoru, Wolverine, Zoe Laveau, Kushala, Dr. Voodoo, Elsa Bloodstone, multiple Ghost Riders, Hannibal King, Hellstrom, Iron Fist, Man-Thing, Jennifer Kale, Ben Reilly, Victoria Montesi, and Werewolf by Night. It's a lot of supernatural and mystical people. Number 8, Web Warriors. The Web Warriors are a fantastic multiversal team that spun out of the events of Spider-Verse. But even before they existed in the comics, they and the Spider-Verse were inspired by the team-ups of multiversal Spider-Man in the 90s Spider-Man animated series. The Web Warriors were brought together by the multiversal threat of the Inheritors, who hunted down various alternate spider people, known as Spider Totems, across the Marvel multiverse. After they were defeated during the Spider-Verse event and the dust had settled, the Web Warriors were created to defend those worlds, who were left afterwards without a hero. Considering how powerful Peter Parker's Spider-Man is, I think you can understand how a team made up of various alternate versions of the character would be off the charts when it comes to their power level. I mean, Spider-Man himself is pretty crazy, like a team of Spider-Men. I wish we had an Avengers team that was actually just like different spider people. That could be pretty cool. Number 7, Fantastic Four. The Fantastic Four, despite being often smaller in number, though they have expanded beyond that number over the years, is still mightier, I'd say, than the Avengers. But I also feel like that's to be expected. After all, the FF were one of the first Marvel teams and are referred to fondly as Marvel's first family. So if anything, I consider them kind of like the first team. The Fantastic Four usually is made up of the 4 initial friends and relatives who are forever changed by exposure to cosmic rays during their first voyage out into space. At least that's the original origin story. The team has had countless heroes join their ranks here and there over the years. Well, you know Mr. Fantastic, Invisible Woman, Human Torch, and The Thing. Some other members on the FF roster have included the Hulk, Wolverine, Ghost Rider, Spider-Man, Storm, She-Hulk, Nova, Moon Girl, Devil Dinosaur, Crystal, and Black Panther, among others. Number 6, The Quiet Council. They aren't really a team of superheroes, but the title of this video is simply Marvel Teams More Powerful Than the Avengers, and The Quiet Council, I would consider them to be a team still. They're a team of folks in the Marvel universe. Granted, their team is more about protecting their power and their nation of Krakoa, but hey, I think it still counts. The Krakoan Quiet Council as such is composed of not just mutant superheroes, but mutant villains as well. As Krakoa is said to be a place for all mutants, where past misdeeds are forgiven in the name of creating a better tomorrow and a safe haven for all mutants. Current members include some of the most prominent, iconic, and powerful mutants in all of existence: Destiny, Hope Summers, Storm, Exodus, Professor X, Emma Frost, Mr. Sinister, Captain Kate Pryde, Mystique, and Sebastian Shaw. Formerly, the Council also featured such additional powerhouses as Apocalypse, Magneto, and Jean Grey, besides. Number 5. X-Men. I mean, of course I was going to put the X-Men on this list. Y'all know me, I'm a huge mutant fan. And the premier mutant team in the comics, of course, is the X-Men. I've also loved that over the years the X-Men has become more of a global team than just necessarily an American one. Unlike the Avengers, which has tended to remain mostly American in terms of their prominent team members throughout the years. I mean, most of the people on the Avengers tend to be American, not always, but I feel like the X-Men is a little bit more global in that regard. Although they do also have a lot of American members. I mean, based in New York. It's Marvel Comics. X-Men's current and previous lineup have also been exceptionally strong, and even the OG X-Men roster featured some mutants who are still considered the most powerful even today, and who are still around, of course, in the comics even today. The current roster features Cyclops, Firestar, Forge, Iceman, Havoc, Magic, Jean Grey, aka Marvel Girl, and Synch. Honestly, Synch is also alone just so amazing, and has taken the meaning of teamwork to another level, I think. Synch. Such an underrated character that now is getting his time in the spotlight. Number 4. Eternals. The Eternals are another team that deserve more love when it comes to the comics and when it comes to their powers. They're a team made up of literal immortal beings who are extremely resistant to dying, but up until recently anyways, even if they did die, they would actually quickly return to life thanks to the machine which rebuilds and resurrects them and is integrated, or was integrated, with the planet Earth, which is actually itself a living mechanism of sorts. The Eternals recently had a killer comic series written by Kieran Gillen that I would also highly recommend you check out. This is a series that will make you a fan if you weren't already. The Eternals all also possess a unique power comparable to a powerful ability of mutant villain Apocalypse. They can manipulate and alter their own molecular structure, having complete control of it. And some, like Circe, can even manipulate matter in general, be it organic or inorganic. Number 3. God Squad. The God Squad was brought together to combat another group of gods, the Skrull Pantheon. The team made their first appearance in Incredible Hercules issue 117, but while Hercules would become their leader, they were actually brought together by Athena's command. Although she didn't serve on the team, a bunch of other super powerful individuals and gods did. With Hercules leading, their roster over time also included Thor, Circe, the Silver Surfer, Ajax, Amadeus Cho, Snowbird, Mikaboshi, Adam, Galactus, and Venus. The God Squad only made a few appearances, but I still think they're a super cool team, and I'm still disappointed we didn't get to see them in Thor Love and Thunder. I was kind of hoping. God Squad, but alas. Number 2. The Annihilators. The Annihilators are an insane cosmic team, and you know how I feel about the cosmic world of Marvel. It's probably one of the most powerful areas. The Annihilators first appeared in Thanos Imperative Devastation issue number 1, and were created by Dan Abnett, Andy Lanning, and Miguel Sepulveda, during a time when the Guardians were getting a refresh by Abnett and Lanning in the comics. The team was actually inspired by Star-Lord himself, who had an idea for a truly badass team of galactic guardians, which Cosmo put into action. The team has featured Beta Ray Bill, Silver Surfer, Gladiator, Icon, Quasar, and Ronan the Accuser. At one point they used their powers to combine two suns together and prevented them from going supernova. So yeah, that's the power level that we're talking about. Number 1. The Defenders. I feel like the Defenders is a team that is often forgotten, but is randomly like one of the best superhero teams we've ever seen from Marvel. Perhaps this also has to do with the fact that none of its members ever really wanted to join or be there, at least not initially. The Defenders was the name given initially to the reluctant team up of the Hulk, Namor, and Doctor Strange, with Strange acting as the de facto leader of the team. Also, just having Doctor Strange as the leader of any team makes it pretty impressive, hence why the Midnight Suns are also on here. When it comes to Avengers teams, he tends to be more elusive, and even solo, he's known for being a powerhouse, so combine him with other powerhouses on a team, albeit ones, you know, in different categories like the Hulk and Namor, and you can see how this team becomes seemingly unstoppable. In fact, I feel like the fact that each of these heroes, you know, kind of has their own thing going on is what makes the Defenders so great. And they've also had a lot of other people join them throughout the years that have also been insane. As long as they all happen to be working together, the Defenders is a pretty great team. Which of course, especially in the beginning, wasn't always the case. But hey, they figured it out.
At number 10 are the Titans. After the events of this year's Dark Crisis, which culminated in the disbandment of the Justice League, what? Superman, Wonder Woman, and Batman had a pep talk with Nightwing, wherein they basically tell him that it's time to straddle up and step up as the leader of a new team to protect the planet. The Teen Titans! I mean, no, not the just the Titans. Seems like the kiddos are all grown up now. And man, do they grow up fast. It's amazing what a lack of adjectives does to a name, right? Anywho, not only does this team bring back everybody from the original Teen Titans, including Beast Boy, Raven, Starfire, and Cyborg, but we've also got some newcomers like Wonder Girl and The Flash added into the roster. Personally, I was a huge fan of the original animated Teen Titans series, so to see the crew reunited after all these years just brings a tear to my eye. At number 9 is the new Avengers. The new Avengers roster this year is more stacked than it's ever been. It's pretty much the dream team. We've got, obviously, Tony Stark's Iron Man, Thor, Vision, T'Challa's Black Panther, Scarlet Witch, Sam Wilson's Captain America with the wings and everything, and the OP powerhouse of the group herself, Captain Marvel. Now, obviously, we're missing a few key players here, namely the non-powered powerhouses, those being Hawkeye and Black Widow. Also, the OG Cap is missing, who's actually still alive in this narrative. And also, most notably, our big green boy is missing. Now, it seems like the theme here seems to be only heroes who can fly are allowed into this club, with the exception of T'Challa, who's got his own bat planes. Panther planes? Anywho, even though we're missing the green Goliath this time around, we've still got all kinds of muscle with this Avengers lineup. If you're enjoying the video so far, please support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. It helps us get our video boosted to the algorithm, get seen by more people, and just all around, this is a nice thing to do, so go ahead, do that. At number 8 are the Super Twins. Meet Ortho Ra and Uzel Ra, descendants of an offshoot of Kryptonians called Phalosians. Hope I said that right. Now, these siblings had a tough start. See, the Phalosians were already an alienated race, having been exiled from Krypton and settling on a new homeworld called New Phalosia. Now, sometime later, their folks and older brother, let's say, got eliminated when World attacked the planet, leaving the twins enslaved and isolated from their family. Now, life got really tough for them after that. They wound up living in cells under an arena, part of a race enslaved by Warzone culture. The warlord culture had brainwashed them into thinking that cruelty was strength and kindness was weakness. But now things took a turn when Mongol, the big boss, ordered the two siblings to fight each other to the death. Now they refused, but luckily enough, Superman swooped in to save the day. Long story short, teaching them that real strength comes from protecting others. Now, after a crazy breakout and some heroic deeds, eventually they landed on Earth, where Lois Lane and Clark Kent took them in, and voila, these super twins were born. Life on Earth was a bit tricky, especially for Ortho, but they're learning the ropes and becoming quite the heroes. At number 7 is the Maker's Council. Now, I know the Maker is typically seen as an evil Reed Richards, but the Maker's gang in this one has beef with Dr. Doom and Kang the Conqueror, so let's just say that this team is morally ambiguous, to say the least. I mean, the Maker here is pretty dark, but I mean, generally speaking, he's got humanity's best interest at heart, even if it comes at seriously grave cost. Anywho, in this reality, the world is split into 7 super states, and after conducting a variety of tests with iterations of experimental societies within his base of operations, the Maker grew convinced that enduring peace on Earth was unattainable due to humans' inherent nature. Yeah, I get it, dude, we're all a bunch of monkeys. As a result, he established a secret council composing of the leaders of each of the 7 territories, and together, they manipulated conflicts and alliances among their nations to unite their respective populations. So in the present day, the Eurasian Republic served as the designated rogue state that unified the other territories as a common foe, with the intention for this role to be rotated between each territory over time. So basically, it's George Orwell's 1984, except instead of Big Brother, it's the Maker. Pretty bleak, but hey, I guess if peace is unattainable, then controlled everlasting war is the next best thing? I don't know. At number 6 is the 13. back in the 1940s, these guys were a mix of good and bad guys doing some morally ambiguous things. But then, bam! Time got all wonky thanks to Barry Allen and Dr. Manhattan messing around, and these 13 got wiped away from history. Now, lucky for them, the Time Masters stashed them away in these kind of snooze pods to keep them safe. But fast forward a little bit, and a dude named Per Degaton muddles things up again, and these pods go kaput. These 13 peeps pop back into history before everything's completely fixed. Now the kicker here is that 8 of them were sidekicks to the OG heroes from the Golden Age. They got snatched up by Childminder and chucked onto, get this, Orphan Island, a place somehow stuck outside of regular time. Then there was some epic showdown shenanigans. They'd team up with Stargirl, Red Arrow, Hourman, and beat the bad guys. But since they can't go back home to their old tie lines, Hourman zaps them to the present, and they become the Young Justice Society. At number 5 are the Thunderbolts. Not to be confused with the original team put together by Baron Zemo, this new squad emerged after the Outer Circle got taken down. When Bucky Barnes, who got all the Outer Circle secrets, teamed up with a person called Contessa Valentina Alguera de Fontaine, that's a name. But guess what? She wasn't the real one. She was actually a fake. And they decided to join forces and make a gang called the Thunderbolts to crush the Red Skull and his whole operation. The crew got bigger when they got on board the Destroyer and the Red Guardian for a mission to wreck Red Skull's base in Argentina. And long story short, they won. They took out the Red Skull's main body and basically just wrecked the whole setup. At number 4 are the Super Kids. So the reason this team got together was because apparently they were too young to join the Teen Titans. It's definitely saying a lot. Now, their story is pretty wild. It all began when some bad guys tried to mess with time, trying to erase 2 of the core members, Animal Girl, and the Flash Twins before they could become heroes. But guess what? Backfired big time. Instead of erasing them, it brought them face to face with their future teammates, Robin and Superboy. And just like that, Super Kids were born. So let's break it down. We've got Animal Girl, also known as Maxine Baker, with her animal powers. Then there's Jai West as Surge and Ivory West as Thunderheart, the speedy Flash Twins, and of course Robin and Superboy rounding out the squad. At number 3 is the Spider Society. There was no way I was gonna make a video about new superhero teams without bringing up an entire collection of my favorite hero from across the multiverse, which made its debut in this year's Across the Spider-Verse movie. The Spider-Verse Society is led by Miguel O'Hara, aka Spider-Man 2099, with this movie being his first cinematic debut. In fact, we got all kinds of Spider-Men who we were praying would make it to the big screen one day, from classics like Ben Reilly, Spider-Man's clone from the Clone Saga, to more obscure ones like Peter Parked Car. Love that. After surviving a universe-ending event, Miguel went around picking up Spideys from all over, their mission being to preserve the multiverse from any conceivable threat, all convening at Spider HQ on Earth 928, to which they travel to using their trusty little dimension-hopping watches. Because Spidey's a genius, don't forget. At number 2 is the Blood Syndicate. The Blood Syndicate, made up of former gang members from Dakota City, is no ordinary super team. They banded together to take down a menacing villain and then protect their turf, Paris Island. Each member had their own rough past, hailing from different gangs and areas of the city. But when this villain threatened to rule the criminal underworld with violence, these superhumans united against him. In their first standoff, the Blood Syndicate really did not do justice. They fought individually instead of working as a team, leading to their quick defeat and separation. However, Flashback, one of their own, took a bold step at traveling back in time to warn them about their impending loss. Now with this crucial knowledge, the Syndicate regrouped, launching a fierce coordinated attack, and this time they fought as a team, leaving the villain defenseless. Fate immobilized him, and Tech-9 delivered the final blow, putting an end to the threat once and for all. And coming in at number 1 are the Dark X-Men, who are back again this year. Madeline Pryor's new Dark X-Men are about to show no mercy, and it's gonna be awesome. Along with the Goblin Queen herself, we've also got Maggot, Archangel, Gambit, Gimmick, Azrael, M-Plate, Zero, and Havoc. Basically a dream team of the X-Men's most lethal heroes. So after the massive party called the Hellfire Gala, Madeline Pryor, who's got some history with the X-Men, leads this new strike team featuring some prominent OG X-Men members like H.A.T.E and Gambit, who are back, but they've never teamed up like this before under such dire circumstances. Now, without giving too much away, this team is set to be among the X-Men's brutal incarnations. I mean, just look at the opening sequence of the first issue of this comic series with Madeline Pryor envisioning her global takeover. It's dark. To say it's dark is an understatement.
Back in 2009, Mr. Fantastic of the Fantastic Four takes a little trip to the inhuman city of H.A.T.E, searching for the Infinity Gems. The massive teleporting inhuman bulldog Lockjaw happens to stumble on the Mind Gem and is granted telepathy. Using this telepathy to read Mr. Fantastic's mind, he decides to use his other power to go and round up the other gems. Along the way, Lockjaw runs into Hairball the cat belonging to Speedball, the dragon Lockheed, the companion of Kitty Pryde, Redwing, Falcon's pet Falcon, Throg, a frog with the powers of Thor, Zabu, the saber-toothed tiger ally of the Savage Lands Khazar, and Miss Lion, May Parker's dog. Despite the fact that this team are literally just super pets, they decide to team up as the Pet Avengers, and they go off to assemble the Infinity Gems as part of a 4-part limited series. A more recent Earth 616 version of the team from 2021 consisted of Lockjaw, Throg, and Lockheed still, but this time accompanied by Doctor Strange's ghost dog Bats, and Hugin and Munin, the Ravens of Thor, formerly belonging to Odin.
This X-Men team and roster, the Extreme X-Men, marked the return of Chris Claremont to the X-Men in a full-time capacity. Extreme X-Men Volume 1 is a series that started in 2001 and ran until 2004. It was a team that featured my girl Rogue as leader, who is soon going to be the leader of the X-Men again, or a X-Men team, which, you know, I'm all about because I love Rogue. The original Extreme X-Men roster features Beast, Psylocke, Bishop, Storm, Sage, and Thunderbird. Lifeguard, Gambit, and Slipstream were also added into the mix throughout the series. This team was originally brought together to find Destiny's premonition-filled diaries, but of course along the way was distracted by many other imminent threats, as happens when you're an X-Men team.
There have been several incarnations of the Outsiders in DC Comics, and most have been Batman or Batman family related, with one team even being led by Nightwing. The first ever version of the team came in 1983 after Batman gained a rather uncomfortable standing with the Justice League. The team had some notable moments, particularly because of its new characters like Katana and Geoforce. Batman and the Justice League would patch things up, and so he left the team to continue operating without him. During that time, they were operating in Markovia in order to receive funding and then moved to Los Angeles before they reunited with Batman and gained access to a Los Angeles Batcave. The last version of the team came following Batman Rip in 2008, where Alfred put together the team with each member representing a part of Batman's legacy, but obviously Batman actually never really bites the dust permanently, so that didn't really last.
Cape Sync is a superhero team, or really a superhero agency I guess I should say, from the same world as Invincible. In fact, as early on as issue number 8 of the Invincible series, you can see some of their members featured in the background. Not only that, but they also ended up getting their own spin-off comic as well. Although I believe it only lasted 3 issues total. It was a miniseries. You know, that's how it goes sometimes. Though there were Cape Sync backup stories I believe in certain issues of Invincible as well, so if you really like it, you can also check those out, which also told the team's story. The miniseries centered initially around Bolt, who welcomes a new recruit to the team as his partner. The team is more like a business and kind of seems to operate kind of like a superpowered police station or a police office. People even get paid and everything. Kid Thor is the new kid in town who joins up with Bolt. Bolt, we learn initially wanted his name to be Black Samson, but obviously that name was already taken by the Guardians of the Globe members, so alas, it was unavailable when he joined up with Cape Sync, and that's why he's Bolt.
The team known as Force Works was formed by Iron Man, who had left the Avengers due to a dispute as to the role of superhumans. Force Works maintained the outlook that rather than being a reactionary force, they should try to preempt both natural and man-made disasters. The team was initially composed of Iron Man, US Agent, Spider-Woman, Julian Carpenter, Scarlet Witch, and Wonder Man, which in my opinion is such an interesting group of heroes. But by the end of their first mission, Wonder Man was thought to be deceased at the hands of the invading Kree, and shortly after the alien Sentry took his place, only to be completely forgotten when the team disbanded. The team fought in several skirmishes, but really only lasted about 2 years. The characters were mainly reabsorbed into the ranks of the Avengers afterwards.
I like to refer to this next one as the other XSE team. This team also spiraled out of a team that we talked about previously on this list, Extreme X-Men. XSE here stands for the Extreme Sanctum sanctions executive. Similar to the original XSE that Bishop was a part of in the future, or in his future, this team is also like a military police force, meant to maintain and in some cases enforce peace is kept between mutants and humans. Storm was asked to create the team by the United Nations and eventually would increase its numbers by recruiting the rest of her X-Men, making this another government-sanctioned mutant team, like X-Factor was originally. Team members have included Bishop, Cannonball, Magma, Rachel Summers, Psylocke, Rogue, Sage, Wolverine, X-23, and Gambit. Now that's a team.
Look, even though the book was cancelled in 1978 after a mere 17 issues, and many people, including the heroes on the team, look at it as an embarrassment, the Champions roster is actually pretty darn capable. With a team of 2 founding X-Men, Iceman and Angel, combined with heavy hitters Hercules, the Spirit of Vengeance Ghost Rider, and being led by Natasha Romanoff, Black Widow, the Champions were aptly named and could kick some serious butt when given the opportunity. The team fought familiar villains like Titanium Man and the Griffin, but even began to develop their own rogues gallery with new villains such as Rampage and Swarm, and they even got an addition to the team in the form of Black Goliath before the book was cancelled. The team was intended to reform in 2007, only they were forced to rename as The Order since Marvel had lost the trademark for the Champions over the years.
You've heard of Green Lanterns, maybe you've even heard of Yellow Lanterns or Red Lanterns or even Black Lanterns, but how about Blue Lanterns? Yeah, that's a color too. Blue Lanterns have only made a few appearances in the new continuity, and even before that, during the New Earth days of DC, they weren't necessarily the most frequent to appear. Mainly, I feel like people just know Green Lanterns, whose color of course represents willpower. To be a Green Lantern, you must be strong in will. So, what's blue about? What's the whole blue thing? To be a Blue Lantern, you must be full of hope. So beautiful. I feel like I could be a Blue Lantern, honestly. If Green Lanterns are like the intergalactic police, Blue Lanterns are like therapists or peacekeepers or priests maybe. They have long been allies to the Green Lanterns, and their powers actually provide a boost to fellow Green Lanterns when they're nearby. Pretty cute. This is because their whole focus is of course on belief and hope, having faith in those around them. As such, many of their names start with a title like Saint, Sister, or Brother. I'd definitely be Sister. Sister Amanda, Blue Lantern. Sister McKnight.
Kind of like the Champions, DC's Detroit League is another team that gets a real bad rap, but actually has a pretty stacked roster when you take a closer inspection. After Aquaman, a charter member of the original Justice League, decided that the Justice League members were too interested in their own individual problems to be part of an effective team, he used his position to disband the team and establish the Detroit League. This new team, with half old-timers and half newbies, was largely used to add some diversity to the DC heroic lineup. Whether it achieved that or not is up to the reader. Made up of League mainstays like Martian Manhunter, Aquaman, Zatanna, and Elongated Man, along with newbies like Vibe, Gypsy, Vixen, and Commander Steel, it's often considered the worst roster of the team, but if you actually look at the roster and do some critical thinking, you'll find that it's very powerful indeed. Martian Manhunter and Zatanna alone are absolute powerhouses. Despite the jokes, Aquaman or even Commander Steel both make really effective tanks, and the rest of the team is quite capable in a variation of different situations.
The God Squad is about as powerful as they sound, but they still remain one of the lesser known teams in the Marvel Universe. The team was originally assembled by the Council of Godheads, and first came together during the events of Secret Invasion. The team first formed in the Incredible Hercules issue number 117 in 2008. The original roster included Adam the Demogorge, Snowbird, the Eternal Ajax, and Amatsu Mikaboshi, later known as, of course, the Chaos King. The roster would go on to include such impressive members as Silver Surfer, Galactus, Circe, Thor, Amadeus Cho, and of course, Hercules himself.
Number 10, Alpha Flight. This is for sure the least obscure entry on the list, as I choose to talk about them constantly, and Alpha Flight has been somewhat reinvented in the last few years and changed into an international space force being led by Captain Marvel, but we are talking about the original team. First appearing in X-Men number 120, Alpha Flight was Canada's answer to the Avengers, with members with unique abilities from all over Canada. Unlike most super teams who are always working together, Alpha Flight operated in more of a Mission Impossible James Bond kind of style, by choosing heroes from their roster and assigning each of them to specific missions that they would handle as individuals and pairs, only coming together as a full team in the case of extreme threats. Despite multiple tries by Marvel to give the team their own ongoing series, Alpha Flight has never quite caught on in the States. Perhaps they are just too specifically Canadian for a readership who tends to prefer American-centric stories, or maybe they just haven't been given the right push into the mainstream. Either way, Alpha Flight remains a team that not a huge amount of readers have heard of, and even fewer have actually read. Although, they did appear in one episode of the classic X-Men cartoon. Small victories. Number 9. ForceWorks. When it was determined that the Avengers' ever-expanding roster should be better divided up across the United States, rather than everyone working out of New York, the West Coast Avengers were formed. This experiment didn't end up working out, and the team was soon disbanded. In a typically Tony Stark move, Tony Stark decided that he should instead fund and create his own superhero team to help protect the West Coast. The resulting team was ForceWorks. The original team consisted of Iron Man, Spider-Woman, Wonder Man, and US Agent, with Scarlet Witch being chosen as the team leader. The team operated for a while, taking on threats like the Mandarin and Kang the Conqueror, but the team was plagued with internal issues. Despite Scarlet Witch being the team leader, Iron Man was constantly undermining her authority and forcing the team to carry out his personal vendettas. This attitude culminated in him forcing the team to brutally kidnap Hawkeye, which got him booted from the team. ForceWorks carried on without him for a while, but eventually decided to disband, although they were briefly brought back under the leadership of Maria Hill in order to fight the Robot Revolution. ForceWorks is an obscure offshoot of the already relatively obscure West Coast Avengers, however they did serve as the supporting cast for Iron Man's 90s animated series. Number 8. The Outlaws. Not to be confused with the team from DC Comics, Marvel's Outlaws are a group of heroes, all with a criminal past, who are led by Spider-Man and Silver Sable. The group formed when photographic evidence came out implicating Spider-Man in a robbery. Wanting to prove the innocence of the man who had helped them reform, Prowler, Rocket Racer, Will-O'-the-Wisp, Paladin, and Sandman all began searching for evidence that would prove the webbed wall crawler's innocence. They discovered that Spidey was actually working for Silver Sable, and that what he had stolen was actually incriminating evidence against a member of the Maggia crime family. Impressed with the group's skills, Silver Sable brought them on as freelancers, and the team would occasionally come together, usually whenever Spider-Man was being framed or something and needed support from outside of the Avengers. Although some of the various members of the team are relatively well-known characters, their team isn't well-known, as they come together so rarely and haven't teamed up since 1991. Number 7. Psyforce. When a telepathic CIA agent named Emmett Proudhawk had a vision about 5 young people with psychic abilities being protected by a hawk, he decided to track down the people in his vision and bring them together to become Psyforce. He got most of them together but was killed by a Russian operative. The 5 psychic youths discovered that when they all touched Proudhawk's mystic medallion, it summoned a creature called the Psyhawk, who would help them defeat their enemies. You know, like Captain Planet. The youths worked together to defeat an evil Russian paranormal named Rodstov, and they were chased by members of the CIA, the KGB, and a shadowy organization called the Medusa Web, who eventually brought the kids on as freelance agents. Although they had their own 32-issue series, the fact that this Marvel team has no recognizable superheroes and is based in Earth 148,611 rather than the mainstream Earth 616 universe keeps them pretty obscure. Number 6. Force of July. The first DC entry on this list, Force of July were an Americana-themed group who often found themselves at odds with the Outsiders. The Force answered to the American Security Agency and were tasked with eliminating anyone whose activities were deemed to be subversive to America's interests by any means necessary. Some of the team's members include Lady Liberty, Silent Majority, Sparkler, Mayflower, and their leader, Major Victory. Although they aren't technically villains, their fanatic patriotism prevented them from seeing that they were being manipulated by their handler, who was using them to help his scheme to create a satellite called Project Orwell that would have been used to spy on people using their televisions. This plot was stopped by the Outsiders, and the Force of July later found themselves fighting against the Suicide Squad, who killed Sparkler and Mayflower. The remaining members ended up joining the squad but did not last long on the team's roster. Number 5. The Inferior Five. Coming from Earth 12 in the DC multiverse, this team are the Nepo babies of a team of heroes called the Freedom Brigade. When the Freedom Brigade retired, the heroes encouraged their children to follow in their footsteps, and they started a team dedicated to protecting the people of Megaopolis. Known as the Fearsome Five, the members of this team, Awkward Man, Blimp, Dumb Bunny, and Whitefeather, have somewhat useless and conflicting powers, and although they usually manage to save the day, it is usually a result of dumb luck rather than skill. Their lameness led to the people of Megalopolis calling their champions the Inferior Five, which the team eventually decided to adopt as their official name. In Crisis on Infinite Earths, their their world was destroyed, and as a result they were sent to comic book limbo, which is a realm similar to the island of misfit toys, where characters who are written out of continuity remain until they're brought back into continuity. Number 4. The League of Losers. In the Marvel universe of Earth 6215, a time-traveling villain from the future named Kronoke used his knowledge of the past to travel back in time to the present with an army and kill all of Earth's mightiest heroes. Fortunately, the records he was working off of did not include any reference to these C-list Marvel characters because none of them had ever done anything that was worthy of note. Darkhawk, Speedball, Dagger, Terror, X-23, Gravity, and Sleepwalker were thus able to take on Kronoke and travel back to before the villain had stolen his time travel tech and stop him. Although this stranded the team in the future, it also created a divergent timeline known as Earth 2992, where the villain's scheme was never an issue. Wow, time travel can be such a pain to explain. Number 3. Section 8. One of the strangest teams in the DC universe, Section 8 is a group of what I will very generously call heroes who operate out of Gotham City. Each member of the team is more bizarre than the last, so buckle up. Shakes is a schizophrenic with a speech impediment. Jean de Baton is a stereotypical Frenchman who hits people with a baton. Defenestrator is a massive former Arkham inmate who carries around a window to smash over his enemies' heads. Phlegm Gem spits massive amounts of snot at his enemies in order to blind them. Bueno Excelente is just some guy who sneaks up on his enemies and then essays them. Dog Welder is a crazy person who welds dogs to people's faces, and Friendly Fire is a hero who can shoot energy beams but is incapable of hitting anything he aims at, usually hitting his teammates instead. They are led by Sixpack, an alcoholic who pees himself and then attacks people with a beer bottle. Shockingly, this team has not gotten a big budget movie, and all of them were killed after an encounter with the many angled ones, with the exception of Sixpack, who suddenly manifested reality warping powers to defeat the villains and save the world. Number 2. The Neo Knights. After having great success publishing comic books based on Hasbro's line of G.I. Joe toys, the two companies collaborated again to create the series that would give much needed backstory for Hasbro's new line of toys, the Transformers. A lot of the Transformers mythology came from these comics, but due to the rights of certain characters remaining with the comic book company, not all of the elements were brought over for the television series or subsequent films. One of these elements is the superhero team, the Neo Knights. When the Autobots returned to space, leaving no one to protect their longtime ally, GB Blackrock, he decided to bring together a team of superpowered humans in order to fight any Decepticons that caused trouble on Earth. The members are Circuit Breaker, a woman who was paralyzed in an encounter with the Transformers and has developed a special suit that allows her to walk as well as fly and shoot repulsor beams. Also on the team are Thunder Punch, a man who can enlarge his feet and hands and punch with heightened strength, Rapture, a woman who can cause any sentient being to shut down and enter an elaborate fantasy, and Dynamo, who could channel the planet's latent energies. They are extremely obscure, only showing up in the original US and UK Transformers comics, and due to Hasbro having the rights for most of the Transformers and Marvel owning the rights to this team, they are likely to remain so for quite some time. Number 1. The Forgotten Heroes. They may have more appearances than some of the other teams on this list, and some of their members are relatively well known, but with a name like the Forgotten Heroes, how could they not end up on the top spot for this list? The team consists of a bunch of DC heroes who all stumbled upon ancient golden pyramids. When the heroes tried to report what they had found, the US government disavowed them and ruined each of their reputations to discredit them. Immortal Man brought all the heroes together and filled them in that the pyramids were part of a scheme by Vandal Savage to kill Superman. They formed a team together and teamed up with the Man of Steel to stop Vandal's plot. The team lives up to its name with members like Atomic Knight, Ballistic Congo Bill, Cave Carson, Dolphin, The Ray, Vigilante, and Resurrection Man, as well as a few slightly more well-known heroes such as Rip Hunter, Animal Man, and Rick Flag.
Coming in at number 10 today is the Asgardians of the Galaxy. The Guardians of the Galaxy never used to be the most popular team until the MCU brought them to theaters, and now almost everyone knows of the Guardians. But what most people don't know about is the Asgardians of the Galaxy. The Asgardians of the Galaxy were a team of Asgardian and Earthbound Asgardian related misfits assembled by the hero Angela secretly on behalf of Kid Loki. The team consisted of Thunderstrike, aka Kevin Masterson, the son of the original Eric Masterson Thunderstrike, who once stood in for Thor in the 90s, Scourge the Executioner, the guy obsessed with Enchantress, Throg, yes, that is the frog version of Thor, who is normally chilling out on a lily pad in Central Park, and Valkyrie, along with her human host Annabelle rigs. Now, pulled together in a tie-in to the 2018 Infinity Wars event, their objective was to help Kid Loki retrieve the Naglfar beacon in anticipation of the upcoming War of the Realms waged by Malekith the Accursed. This put them into conflict with Nebula, who was using the beacon to lead an army of undead gods to bring about another Ragnarok. And if that sounds awesome, it's because it is.
And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not consider clicking that subscribe button? Number 9, Stormwatch. I just found out this today, but apparently when it comes to DC, there are actually a few different teams known as Stormwatch. Did you know that? One of them is actually a magic-based team, which is probably even less known than the one I'm going to talk about. If we get to a part 3, I'll tell you about that one. However, I figured Stormwatch from Wildstorm was still less known in comparison to stuff like, the Justice League, when we're talking DC. Who is Stormwatch in the Wildstorm universe before they came to DC? Well, initially this was a team created by Jim Lee under his imprint, where he set out to create his own characters, which is different from what happens when you as a creator make things for DC and Marvel, where they basically retain the rights to everything you make. For Jim Lee, this proved to be a profitable choice, as DC even later offered to buy Wildstorm from him. So he not only got to do, everything on his own, which he got to own, but then also due to Wildstorm's success, he also got to sell the imprint back to DC after and make money on that deal, which is pretty great. That's some of the historical context for Stormwatch in regards to the imprint, but in regards to the canon history for this team, Stormwatch was initially brought together to basically combat alien incursions. The team, however, has been disbanded and reformed multiple times, and they've also been known as a different name, one that might even be on this list. Prominent members have included Backlash, Jackson King, Jenny Sparks, Henry Bendix, Winter, multiple versions of Diva, Fahrenheit, Apollo, Midnighter, Synergy, Nautica, and Deathblow, to name a few. Later on, this team would be rebranded as something else that we'll talk about in a bit.
Number 8, the Champions of Los Angeles. The Champions were the first West Coast-based superhero team. They formed like all great superhero teams do, with several heroes happening to just meet by chance against one great threat. In this case, that threat took the form of the Greek god of death, Pluto. The group consisted of 2 former X-Men, Angel and Iceman, the Greek god of strength Hercules, who I swear is underappreciated, Johnny Blaze, the original Ghost Rider, and the Russian spy Black Widow, who became this team's leader. After defeating Pluto, the Champions of Los Angeles, or just the Champions, decided to stick together as a team. Warren Worthington III, aka Angel, was the wealth behind the team. They bought their own Quinjet and named it the Champ Jet, which I find hilarious because over time, the members of this team started to become embarrassed by the team, with both Iceman and Angel calling it an embarrassment and a nightmare because they had no idea what they were doing, apparently. But still, they had a few more adventures working with X-Force, and they had some additions to the roster with Black Goliath, who aided the team in scientific endeavors from time to time, and another Russian female hero, Darkstar, who was originally there to capture Black Widow, but changed sides instead.
Number 7, Avengers. I know what you're thinking. Amanda, what? I know the Avengers. How could you not know the Avengers in 2023? Well, it's possible that you're not thinking of the same Avengers team that I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of the Avengers from Earth 1610, the original Ultimates reality. You see, while the Avengers did actually exist there, this team was actually very different from the version that we know that hails from the MCU or even the comics main reality of Earth 616. The Avengers team here was kind of treated more like a version of the Suicide Squad. They only made about 23 appearances total, and the roster was very different from what you'd be used to when you think of the mainstay Avengers in the main continuity. I mean, some of the same names, but totally different people. The team roster has included Black Widow, but this Black Widow was Monica Chang, the ex-wife of Nick Fury, Gregory Stark, Tony's evil twin brother in this reality, the Punisher, Nick Fury, Red Wasp, Tyrone Cash, a super interesting character, you should look him up, an evil version of Spider-Man created by Gregory Stark in a lab known as the Spider, an imitation of Thor known as Perun, Hawkeye, and War Machine. Basically, they're kind of like a rougher imitation Avengers.
Number 6, the Legion of Monsters. The Legion of Monsters is a team of monster-like characters who have vowed to protect other monsters like them that were hunted down to be killed or couldn't defend themselves. The team has consisted of characters like Shikla, Werewolf by Night, Ghost Rider, Zombie, Elsa Bloodstone, Frankenstein's Monster, Man-Thing, Morbius, Satana, the Living Mummy, and Mamphibian, among others. Now, the original Legion of Monsters were united by chance when they each each happened to investigate the appearance of a strange benevolent being called the Starseed, who came crashing to Earth. Starseed attempted to aid the monsters and cure them of their forms, even though, being monsters, they couldn't control themselves and attacked Starseed. Because of the fear they caused him, when Man-Thing touched him, he bit the dust, in Marvel Premiere number 28 from November 1975. One of the Legion's many missions included saving remaining monsters from the Hunter of Monster Special Force. They sent the monsters into the Morlock tunnels and started a monster metropolis where the monsters could live in peace. They are the group that saved Frank Castle the Punisher and turned him into Frankencastle.
Number 5. Teenage Kicks. You may have heard of this one thanks to the popular streaming series The Boys. It was the team that Popclaw from season 1 was on when she was a kid. The team is a parody of DC's Teen Titans and is a teenage superhero based team that was managed by Vought International. In the comics, they have a somewhat larger role in the story, but are still considered pretty much minor antagonists.
Number 4. The Authority. The Authority is a team that not a ton of people know about now. They were really popular and cool, but this team is going to be joining the DCEU under James Gunn's reboot. So before everyone and their moms hears about them, let's talk about them here. Now for starters, the Authorities are not strictly a DC team. They are part of the Wildstorm universe of Earth 30, which we did talk about earlier, I believe. Here, metahumans are a bit more in control. They have no qualms against removing human political leadership if they engage in initiatives that harm others. Now the initial roster consisted of hyper-skilled tactician Midnighter, who is basically like insane Batman, the Superman-esque solar-fueled powerhouse Apollo, the engineer whose blood consists of microscopic nanites, the winged warrior woman Swift, Jack Hawksmoor, who draws superhuman abilities from cities, and the Doctor, a shaman connected to the energies of the Earth. Leading them was Jenny Sparks, the electrically powered spirit of the 20th century. Now they came together to protect the world by any means necessary, and they proved that. The Authority often used lethal measures to defeat their enemies and weren't above causing collateral damage to do so. They were actually the basis behind the evil supervillain team, the Elite, that Superman faced in What's So Funny in Truth, Justice, and the American Way. But funnily enough, Superman even had his own version of the Authority team for a time.
Number 3. Unofficial Dark X-Men. Well, the Dark X-Men were more of a thing during Norman Osborn's time in charge of the organization which replaced S.H.I.E.L.D., which he named Hammer during Dark Reign. There is also a new team of Dark X-Men that have appeared on the scene. Watch out, sound the alarms, new Dark X-Men. Although in the comics, they just go by the name of X-Men. There's no dark. But editorially, and in regards to the series they're featured in, they're known as the Dark X-Men, which is why I'm giving that name to them unofficially. This team is also known as the Limbo-based X-Men, as their team leader is Madeline Pryor, the Goblin Queen, Jean Grey's once evil clone, and the current ruler of Limbo. Members include a Zero-possessed Albert, I love Albert, Emplate, Gambit, Feint, Havoc, Marrow, and Archangel. Although I think Archangel's no longer on the team right now.
Number 2. The Power Pack. The Power Pack were the 4 of Dr. James Power and Margaret Power. Now their father, James, was in the process of creating an antimatter reactor that would supply the planet with clean energy, but also could potentially destroy the planet as well. On the night before the reactor was going to be tested, the 4 Power kids, Alex, Julie, Jack, and Katie, had a run-in with Alefire Whitemane, aka Whitey, who was a member of the alien race known as the Chimelians, and he had crash landed not too far from the Powers' home and was not doing too hot. He told the kids about another alien race known as the Snarks, who were after the antimatter technology in order to destroy other planets. Now as he passed away, he bestowed powers on the 4 kids. Alex became Zero-G with the power to manipulate gravity, Julie became Lightspeed with the powers of flight and acceleration, Jack became Mass Master with the ability to control the density of the molecules of his own body, and Katie became Energizer with the ability to disintegrate an object and absorb the released energy into herself, using it to project power balls of force from her chest. Other than facing Emperor Jakal and the Snark species that he commanded, the Power Pack have teamed up with all kinds of heroes like Spider-Man, the X-Men, Cloak and Dagger, Devil Dinosaur, Gwenpool, Moon Girl, and Franklin and Valeria Richards in the Future Foundation.
Number 1. Queen's Vengeance. Queen's Vengeance is a reality-warped version of the Avengers. This team was created when Morgan Le Fay ended up attacking the Avengers. As they prepared to strike back against her, Morgan Le Fay warped reality reality and ended up making the Avengers into members of her court, many of them becoming part of her trusted guard, the Queen's Vengeance, because reality was warped so that it was like basically the Middle Ages. The only member of the Avengers who was not transformed by the reality warp was Scarlet Witch, who actually could not be controlled this way. Wanda was held as a prisoner as such in Morgan Le Fay's dungeon, but managed to use her powers to reach out to her fellow Avengers, breaking the spell over Captain America's mind. Cap then sought out the other members of the team, and they managed to all wake up and rebel against Morgan Le Fay, reverting reality back to normal.
Hey, you made it to the end of the video. Come binge some more top 10 nerd content. Check out this video next. It's about all the secret powers that you didn't know these X-Men characters had. Click the video now to find out more.